Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham and I'm joined today by Kurt Weiler and Bob Ferrante. Guys, welcome.
Pat, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys? I haven't talked to you since Saturday morning, and obviously a lot has happened. Not all of it good, but listen, Florida State falls to 1-4 after an unimpressive second half at SMU. Kurt, you were there, and actually, we're glad to have you here because we joked on the post-game show that we were afraid that you might enter the transfer portal and join SMU's rival site. So we thought you might not want to come back here and deal with the next 7 weeks of this football season. So welcome back. How was the first ACC game at SMU's Gerald Ford Stadium? You had you had Eric Dickerson there and President Bush.
George Bush, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a small stadium, but it's a pretty cool stadium. It's unfortunate that Florida State had a solid chunk of fans there. I'd probably say it was in like the 75-25, 70-30 range. Like there were that many Florida State fans there. It's a shame that Florida State didn't give a better game to enjoy, but the support of that fan base remains real.
Yep. All right, so we got some things we're going to go through, including y'all's thoughts on the game from your eyes, and talk a little bit about what we saw after watching it a second time. But Bob, I know you guys have some breaking news as it pertains to the quarterback situation. There's already going to be some updates, but talk about what we just posted at theosceola.com.
According to a report by ESPN.com's Pete Thamel, according to sources, so we're not sure where this is exactly coming from and trying to get it confirmed by Florida State Sports Information, but DJ Uiagalelei has a broken finger on his right hand that will keep him out at least for the Clemson game. Again, Florida State has a bye after Clemson, so we're not sure how long this injury could be an issue for him as far as him throwing. But that report would have DJ out for the Clemson game, would have Brock Glenn in for Saturday night's game. So it's a pretty huge development. I think Mike Norvell has been I won't say super transparent about this injury. He's talked about it Saturday and Monday, but we'll try to get you all more information, if not live, on the Osceola.com later tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, that's interesting because you could tell early in the game he dislocated his left pinky. You saw him trying to put it back in place on television. And I've dislocated pinkies before; they're not fun. But I thought he showed some toughness trying to pop it back in himself on the side, out on the field. But yeah, that's listen. The only bad news there, guys, is, and we've all been, and we were going to talk about this later in the show, but because we're going to talk about the fact that Brock was going to play because he was named as an or. And what I thought that meant before the news of the injury was that Mike has gone ahead and scripted series out similar to what Napier's doing at Florida with his quarterbacks. I thought when he put the or there, it definitively meant that Brock was going to play. I think they've done Brock Glenn a disservice and this team a disservice by not getting him more reps than they got before Saturday night. And I think that's going to be evidence on Saturday night in Doak Campbell Stadium. But just get y'all's thoughts on it. Kurt, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I wrote that column at Bob's suggestion the week of the Cal game. Going into that game, this was a pretty nice ramp up of a schedule. Not a cakewalk, clearly, as Florida State has shown, but the easier part of the schedule, we thought. And so here's a perfect chance to see what Brock can do for you. Florida State did not take advantage of that, and now here we are. And Brock, after Brock's 2 starts last year, we're in the ACC championship game against the top 15 Louisville team and against a pissed-off Georgia team. Yep. Now he looks like he's going to get thrown into the deep end against the Clemson team that the defense is still the defense. The offense looks pretty good too. They are Dabo found some fountain of youth or something because they look much closer to what they were for a while there than what they have been lately with the last few weeks and how impressive they've looked.
Yeah, listen, I think it's great that they're going to move on to Brock if DJ is indeed hurt, and this is the game which we have no reason to believe is not true based on who that report is coming through. But listen, it's just another mismanaged aspect of this season for Mike Norvell and his staff. Brock should have played after the Boston College game, should have been inserted in the lineup every series. It's just another mistake in what has become a unbelievably epic fail on this program's part to maintain where it should be going. But Bob, what are your thoughts on what's going on with the quarterback situation?
We've talked about this all along since New Year's Day, that DJ was a bridge quarterback. It's become a bridge to nowhere for Florida State, and that doesn't function when, again, if the coaching staff thought they were going to get ahead in games and there was going to be a roadmap for Brock Glenn to play third quarter, fourth quarter, have some developmental time on game days. That plan failed when you can't even maintain or get leads. It's just not working. Again, we've talked about all different kinds of options, from the old school second quarter Kentucky Derby offense, when you can throw a Brock Glenn out there, to just get him a drive, just figure out some opportunity within a game to do it. Look, this offense is not fun to watch. Let's just say it. Let's just put it out there. And DJ's not the sole problem. I think we've all hit on this. There's offensive line issues. There's drops. There's bad perimeter blocking. I do think, honestly, I think the running backs are giving some good effort. They just don't have great rushing lanes, and they're not blocking great either. So I'm saying it's at every position.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah. Listen, the issues on this team are more than one person, more than one position. They're on the field. They're on the sidelines. I think there are probably some issues internally that would. I mean, how do you explain how far this program has fallen in 9 months, 10 months? I mean, it's unprecedented. I mean, I'm sure we can go out there and find somebody, but I think it's unprecedented for the Florida State football program, certainly. And listen, and you're right. If we can bleed into the SMU game back to that way. I mean, listen. You couldn't do anything offensively. They struggled to figure out what they can do with this personnel. And then on top of that, for this particular game, and I want to get y'all's take, because I've had a chance to talk about the SMU game with the people that watch this show. We spent about an hour post game. But, my biggest disappointment in the team this past weekend was they got a hard-fought win over Cal. Should at least have come into that game with some defensive momentum on the defensive side of the ball. That defense has got some veteran players on it, and it knew that it had to carry the day for Florida State to have a chance to win at SMU. And we saw a team that did not come ready to play physically or mentally. They did not bring the same intensity. They did not bring the same fire on the road. And, that was the big question. Could they travel? And, the old axiom is defense travel, special teams travel. We knew it was going to be an uphill battle on the offense. And were you guys as surprised as I was that they regressed coming out of the Cal game?
I felt like the offensive line and defensive line should have had the energy, set a tone. I don't want to say dominate, because that's a silly word to say. I mean, these are two ACC schools. But, man, I wanted to see that Florida State defensive line just set a tone early from the start. And instead, that first drive, it's 3 third-down completions. Yes. And it felt like, backs were against the wall from the start, and the offense has to respond. It felt like Florida State was not the aggressor, I guess, is what I'm really getting at. And it was sort of a disappointing start in that regard, but it never got a lot better. I just didn't see that energy. I swear Mike Norvell said something about loafing, was loafing evident? And it felt like there was some loafing in that second half for sure.
Yeah, he was asking about a particular play, but it was evident that there were loafing on other plays. He was talking about the interception return for a touchdown because Toafili trailed that ball all the way downfield like a madman trying to strip it, and you didn't see a whole lot of that outside of him and one other kid. Yes, the
Kentron and Toafili.
Yeah, so Kurt, just talk about a little bit about what the energy you felt at the stadium and comparing one week to the next.
Yeah, I think Fernando Mendoza with Cal had some mobility, but it was another week where you weren't facing the most mobile quarterback. You faced a mobile quarterback again, and he didn't break a ton of runs, but he extended a few plays. He made would-be sackers miss. He ran his way out of a couple sacks and kept plays going long enough that guys could get open. And I think it's funny. I was talking to someone walking out of the stadium. The unfortunate thing for Florida State, pretty much the rest of that schedule is chock full of guys who can run at least a little bit. Cade Klubnik can run. Cam Ward can run. Whoever UNC's throwing at quarterback behind, with it not being Max Johnson, can run. Riley Leonard can run. Whoever Florida's throwing out there can run. I mean, it does not get any easier in that facet from here. Malik Murphy too. I'd even shout out Duke's quarterback. I mean, it's going to be a lot. So I think that they still have some problems there that maybe the last 2 weeks and the defensive improvements we saw had something to do with not facing the most mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah, listen, there were issues everywhere from penalties to play calling to the defense. Obviously, didn't show up. I don't think this team was ready as a whole. Now they stuck in the game. Listen, I agree with you, Bob, that the inability to stop them on third down was evident right away. It would be a consistent theme throughout the game. The other consistent theme, and it started from the first play. This was a team that liked to push the perimeter in the run game. The first play you give up contained for a 9-yard gain. It was right. The tone was set right off the bat. So Southern Methodist goes right down, scores. FSU had a nice response. DJU was 3 of 4 for 70 yards on that first drive, and you looking, hey, listen, they found something. They had some success off the RPO action with that glance or slant route, however you want to call it. But it's an RPO, so it's 7-7, and you're feeling pretty good about what's going to happen. And then it kind of out, particularly in the pass game. The pass game kind of went away for various reasons. We're seeing guys drop the ball that shouldn't be dropping the ball. Listen, I think we're all shocked that Kyle Morlock cannot catch a cold in January right now. That was not what we saw in camp. Another thing that we did not see coming. We saw penalties. You got a fifth-year senior getting 2 holding penalties. One took away a big pickup. We saw undisciplined penalties with the penalty on Hussey on the sideline where he wanted to catch the guy inbounds and then play tough guy out of bounds and push him to the wall, and that puts them first and goal. They would ultimately score. We saw the timeout used on 3rd and 1 because they put too long in the huddle. And yes, that's on DJU, but Mike and the staff have an ability to get him out of the huddle up to 15 seconds. They did not do it. They break the huddle at 8, have to call a timeout that if they had been able to stay in the game would have been very important. You get a 67-yard punt that gets offset by what ended up being a 37-yard penalty. I mean, the way this team shows itself to be a bad football team are multiple. Listen, I think we all knew going into this game, this was a game Florida State had a chance to lose. I don't think any of us saw them losing it the way they did.
All you talked about is, I think, we knew there was a talent drop-off on this team. We knew that was to be expected. We knew this team wasn't likely at all to go 12-0, that there was going to be some kind of step back. I think, obviously, still picked to win the ACC, still supposed to be very good. I think the more stunning thing than the talent drop-off is, Mike Norvell and their staff came a long way from a team that in his first year and in the years before he got here made some real stupid plays to a team that played very smart football. And just the mistakes in plays is one thing, but the mental mistakes like that is pretty stunning to witness for a guy who has come a long way building that smart level of football play that we've seen grow more and more in his time at Florida State.
Yeah, and go ahead, Bob. I know you're getting ready to say something.
I mean, it's kind of a broken record thing, but we're still questioning the leadership on this team. And it's one thing to question the coaches and are they putting players in the right play calls? Are they playing the right players? It's another to still say, are there leaders? Are there vocal leaders? We know Darius Washington is a guy that's well respected. We know Maurice Smith is well respected. I think Justin Cryer is maybe the only emerging young leader that's come out that we can really feel with confidence and say that's a guy who's using his voice after seeing playing time. But there's just not enough leadership to me that's really keeping everything in line, accountable. Mike Norvell uses these words about responsibility, accountability. Pick your buzzword of the moment in coach speak world, but we're just not seeing it. I mean, it's not there.
Yeah, no, it's definitively not there. And what you can tell, listen, one of the things I like about us being able to go and watch practice, particularly in fall camp, is it gives you a chance to get a pulse of the team. And I can specifically remember telling Jerry twice walking off during camp, I was concerned because I had a hard time finding the pulse of this football team. We did not have that issue the previous 2 falls, right? We said going out of the 2022 fall, this year is going to be different than the 5 and 7 season. And then we felt even better about it after camp coming out last year because the kids like to go to practice. They like to compete against each other. You had visible leaders that not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. And particularly Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, they ran that team on the defensive side of the ball. And JT, Jordan Travis, ran it on the offensive side of the ball. And my concern was I did not feel the sense of urgency from this team. I did not feel the camaraderie in practice from this team. They're just, and it's hard, it's nuanced, right? It's hard to put a finger on because it's not any one thing, and it's not just like it wasn't any one thing when we picked up the positives. But yes, I think Kurt, I think everybody said it. We didn't expect this team to be last year's team, but I don't think we expected this year's team to be what it's turned out to be, which is right now one of the worst teams in college football.
Well, and I think, to your point, I don't think you're wrong what you talked about with the preseason. I think that camaraderie can be built through wins, but is not going to be built through the season that Florida State's had so far. I mean, that's just like, it's hard to imagine that's what's going to make the guys come together, especially when it is. I mean, there are so many new faces and guys stepping into bigger roles. I think part of that camaraderie the last 2 years is they were 23-4. Those were two very good teams. It is easy to have that camaraderie when things are going well. It is much harder to build that when you're struggling like Florida State is right now.
Yeah, well, I do think that's part of it. But I think part of the reason this team is not there is no unity. There's no together. I don't think there's a shared common goal like the other two. Like those other last two teams had we used to hear, we want to bring Florida State back. We want to bring Florida State back. That was a echo. And I don't think we've heard that here. We've not heard anybody say we need to maintain the momentum that Mike has created in this program the last 4 years. You don't hear anybody voicing it. Of course, now listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't pay a lot of attention to player interviews because what I want to see happens on Saturdays. I don't the talking. That's fine for us. I want to see football players talk with their pads and their performance, and I want to see coaches speak with their play calling on both sides of the ball. Yeah, listen, and the other thing, and Mike addressed it today, and Mark and I talked about it with Fish on Saturday night. Listen, whatever the message is that these coaches and Mike and the assistants, whether it's Mike to the entire team or the assistant coaches to their specific position groups, the message is not being received. And Mike says the message, and I know he's talking about in totality. A coach's message doesn't necessarily change, but it certainly changes in how you are trying to motivate people to practice, how you are putting in the schematics for a given week, how you're trying to get a player to improve. And I can remember Skip Holtz telling us that terrible last year at South Florida that had a lot of similarities as far as personality of teams and lack of leadership and all that. But Skip used to tell the assistant coaches, I don't want to hear that you don't know what's going on with one of your players or why he's not doing this or that. I pay you to learn how to communicate and reach that kid. That's one of the reasons you're coaching him. That's one of the reasons he's in a room with you. You have to figure it out. And his other thing was when a kid's not talking to you, he's still talking to you. And I'm worried, guys, that this message is not, and I'm not talking about, and I don't know, you can see the play that they're not responding to whatever they're being told, right? I mean, you can't hide that. And we're being, Mike said that, he thought that they got a bunch of real ones on this football team and that they got and real ones rise up. Well, we see no evidence on Saturdays that they're responding to what they're selling and the coaching staff is selling. And we don't see any real ones because nobody's rising up and we're halfway through the season. And I think people are tired of listening to it.
And I think at some point you have to start looking at players and say, okay, you're a veteran. I think you're productive. I think you can mentor the guy next to you. So like say an offensive lineman like Darius Washington, you can put an Andre Otto next to him at guard and you can feel better about how Andre is going to perform because he's between Maurice Smith and Darius Washington. That's where you've got to get an Andre Otto out there. You have to look at situations where you can put, I think, second-year players more than true freshmen. You can put redshirt freshmen or true sophomores out there in positions where you think they can be successful because they've done it with some amount of repetition on practice field. And there are guys around them who can help them succeed, whether it's in the huddle, or it's just a little bit of eye contact and communication. The single biggest thing I want to see moving forward, I know it's 1-4 and people are hoping for a rivalry win or something down the stretch. Show me player development. Show me some type of player development of these younger guys so that they can feel they're bought in, they're part of the current, they're part of the future. And that's what it's all about.
Well, listen, I think Mike pulled the pin on that in the fourth quarter of this game. We saw it actually started in the third quarter because after Morlock dropped that pass, I don't think he was thrown to again the rest of the game. Landon Thomas comes in the game. He gets indoctrinated into pro football. He misses a cutoff block or two, but then he has a touchdown at the end of the game. And I think everybody's asked for this youth movement. I think they're fixing to get it in periodically and in spots. And I think, listen, if you get what you ask for, some of the hand wringing and all those things has to disappear. And you have to realize that this is turning into a developmental year with looking forward to 2025. And guys, probably more than likely, what you're really doing is trying to ramp up for 2026.
We were calling for this at 0-3. In a way, it makes sense. It may have taken the coaching staff a little bit longer to get there, to realize the extent of like how unsalvageable this season is. I mean, Florida State's staring down 1-5 because they're going to be a pretty heavy home underdog to Clemson. I don't know what that line's at right now. I thought
points right now.
We were talking Saturday on the sideline. I said it should open at like 24 points.
Yep.
Like, I mean, that to me is like,
I think the reason that it's not higher, Kurt, is because if you look at their defensive stats nationally, they're terrible. Like they're 88th in total defense, but it's also very skewed because in at least two of their ball games, Dabo has emptied the bench in the second half for the majority of the second half. And I think people need to pay attention to that when they see that line.
Bookmakers are normally smarter than that. Like that's the thing. Like, it's interesting. But no, I mean, I'm definitely surprised it's that small line. But yeah, I mean, I think now that they're staring down 1-5 in the face, and going into a bye week after that second bye week of 3 feels like an opportune time to give guys a heads up. Hey,
there's a bye week before Duke?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's all. I did not know that. I thought we were going straight through.
No, there's 3 this year.
Can we not do anything that week? Just take a week of vacation, go reset our mind frame for the run. But yeah, listen, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond. And I thought they'd respond better this week against SMU coming off a win, but they did not. And listen, I think I asked you the guys, I told you what issues have solutions on offense. Before we go to break, I do want to talk about that because, we are going to – I think that with Brock going in, we may – and I think they'll run him. I think you got to take advantage of his athletic ability to try to open up that offense. But do you think Brock and listen, we can sit here and I know Mike I know he continues to say, I believe in this team. I believe in its potential, all those damn things. But this team is 1-4. It's halfway through the season. You're not playing a 17-game season like they do in the NFL. You're halfway through your year. You kind of are who you are at this point. The offensive line is not going to all of a sudden turn into Joe Moore Award finalist. You're not going to have a Fred Biletnikoff Award finalist at receiver. You're not going to have a Doak Walker guy at running back. Although Lawrence Toafili, to his credit, plays his ass off. And if all 10 other guys on offense played like Lawrence Toafili does, and let's be honest, they wouldn't be 1-4 because some of this is effort and strain and want to. I know Mike says he says they want to. I think it's another individual thing.
I said Saturday in the press box at one point, I feel bad for Lawrence Toafili. Like that, this is his last year. Like because he does deserve better.
Well, the only thing I hope the NFL scouts are paying attention to what that kid is doing, because if you go back and watch the games again, which I know you guys do, there are a good percentage of his runs, guys, where he is doing a lot of it on his own. I mean, the kid is now I kind of regret that they didn't play him more early in the season at running back. Maybe he should have been the starter the whole time instead of splitting time with Roy Dell. But he's certainly the one guy on offense that's kind of picked up the pace. And I know there's some. He's not. I mean, I know there's other guys trying. I'm not saying that, but his effort sticks out well above everybody else's on that side of the ball. And you feel bad for a kid like that because you go and listen. The perfect example of that is the pick 6 touchdown. he could have just lollygagged his way down there, half-assed it all the way. He was coming from a long way behind. And listen, he wanted to do the old Leon Lett play back from Thanksgiving 1990 something. Kurt wasn't even born then.
I know that. I know what you're talking about. And also, yes, I was. And I was born in 1990. I'm not that young, sir.
So somebody had to tell you about it. You saw it on YouTube like in 2005. That's the first time you saw it. But anyway, so I think Florida State, I think that's the example kids on Florida State offense need to pay attention to. And I think we've got to hope. And I don't think it really matters for Clemson, but I think it will for Duke. I think you've got to hope that enthusiasm and energy that Brock plays with is contagious. And when you put him in a huddle with Toafili, maybe you get it going a little bit. Maybe he brings out some energy and effort in some of these other guys. And listen, we're going to come back and talk about it after the break. I think some of the changes on the depth chart will help, could possibly help, because I know from what we've seen at practice, we're fired up about seeing a couple of these guys getting a chance to get in the game and play football. So what we'll do, we're going to take a quick break for about 90 seconds, and Bob and I and Kurt will come back, talk about the updated depth chart. Then I have some questions for Bob. We're going to play He Said, We Said, where I asked Bob and Kurt some things about what they think Mike Norvell meant by some of the things he said at this press conference, because I've got some opinions, and we're going to share them with you here in a second. But we'll be back in about 90 seconds after we hear from our sponsors, and appreciate you joining us, and hope you'll be back on the other side of this thing.
The Backshore. That stretch of fluffy sand just beyond the reach of the salty waves. The place reserved for volleyball nets, cookouts, and the air filled with fun and laughter. Celebrate the Backshore with Backshore Apparel. Grab an amazingly soft and comfy Backshore Apparel beach hoodie to keep you protected from the sun's harmful rays. Or the Backshore revamped trucker hat, a modern twist on a classic favorite. Crafted from moisture-wicking fabrics, ensuring they're lightweight and breathable. Not to mention durable with their unique floating feature. Shop now at BackshoreApparel.com. And right now, FSU fans get 10% off your order with code FSU10. Hey Seminole fans, Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI, or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
All right, welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. I'm Pat Burnham, and I'm with Bob Ferrante and Kurt Weiler. And before we get started back to Florida State football, I just want to take a second to wish my father, who's probably watching or listening, a happy birthday. He turned 83 today, Dad, I think. But happy birthday. He got a great birthday trip to Tuscaloosa this past weekend where he played college football. He was in the stadium for the Alabama-Georgia game, so he said that might be the best birthday he's ever had. He said they put on a hell of an experience at Alabama, and that we all should do ourselves a favor and go to a night game there. But anyway, happy birthday to Dad. If you're watching, listening, Dad, hope you had a great day. If your mom has spoiled you, and Allison and Mike are going to take you out to a nice place to eat. All right, guys, so let's get right back to it. We saw some changes in the depth chart today, which I think we were all kind of excited about. We've been asking for some of these and hoping for some of these, and I'm trying to get to our depth chart. But we've talked a little bit about the Brock Glenn deal being it looks now to be the starter after the news on DJU. We'll find out more about that later. But you've got now what looks to be could be Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhawk as your your first two quarterbacks, guys. Just give me your thoughts on how that could play out and what you would like to see if that's indeed the case and DJU were to be out for an extended period, because it could have, with the way they do bones a day, you could have a pin put in there. Who knows how this is going to play out.
Unfortunately for DJ, I kind of think the best case is he doesn't play again. Like I don't say that like I don't have any ill will towards DJ, but by the time he's healthy again, with what is Florida State going to have to play for, that it justifies putting him back out there. So I'm interested. I mean, how what steps has Brock made? I mean, I think we've seen a progression from Brock this offseason. I think a fully healthy offseason and a fully healthy first 5 weeks of the season, even if it was only in practice, really, has helped him. And I think, I mean, obviously it's getting thrown into the deep end a bit again, like we talked about, but I'm interested to see what Florida State can do with his legs, what he can do to keep plays alive, I mean, frankly, what the offensive line in front of him looks like. We can get into that in a second. And I don't know. I mean, my column Saturday, I happy to be proven wrong, happy to be old takes exposed. Where I wrote Saturday, I'm not sure. I don't think a quarterback change can fix this team anymore. I think there is too much wrong elsewhere, and they're kind of too broken at the moment for the change to Brock to change things. But you never know for sure, and I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, Bob?
You know, I've been asking to see Brock Glenn quarterback the ones, the first team offense for a while. Yeah. I know everybody saw Brock last with the ones essentially in the bowl game and against Louisville. And as Alex Atkins said, you know, those were two really, really tough situations to put Brock in, especially considering he had an injury that kept him out for a good chunk of last fall. So a lot of his on-field development time was lost in 2023. I want to see what it looks like now. I know a lot of fans have a vision of what Brock looked like from 9-10 months ago. That was a long time ago in his development.
Yep.
What can Brock look like with a functional offensive line? These are a lot of ifs, right? I don't think you can line up with two tight ends. I saw Florida State try 3 tight ends at times against SMU. I don't want to see that again. Please, let's try and spread defenses out. Let's try and spread them out. If you want to go 3 wide, try to run against a somewhat lighter box. Let's see how a hat on a hat plays out. I do think this team can run the ball to some extent. It's not going to be a top 25 run offense like we thought it might be in the preseason. If you can at least run and give Brock a chance, a functional chance, not being behind the chains, second down, third down, let's see what it looks like. Let's see how he can grow. This is not ideal to do this against Clemson, but he's got the bye week. He's got an opportunity then, and let's just see how it plays out.
Yeah, and listen, I think that, I think the big question is you've got a couple of games that should be closer to 50-50 than Clemson and Miami and Notre Dame. It would not shock me if they compete with North Carolina just because North Carolina does not play with a lot of passion in its own right. They blew a 20-point lead. Plus, we have the actual fact that Mike Brown cannot beat a Florida State coach football team, no matter who is coaching. That's just there's scientific evidence of empirical evidence of that. It just does not happen. And then listen, I can't believe that Duke is a 50-50 game. Like I'm in shock that we're even saying this. Is it even a 50-50 game?
No, I mean, Duke's undefeated. I'm not convinced Duke's that good, but they are 5-0.
No, they haven't played anybody. They have not played anybody.
Sure, but 5-0 is 5-0 at a certain point.
Yeah. I mean,
when you're comparing it with a 1-4 team.
Yeah, well, coaches always say winning's a habit, and Duke is winning this year without Riley Leonard. He's over in Notre Dame. But yeah, so I think Brock can. You're right, Kurt. There's too many stumps that are above water right now on this offense. But I do think that obviously, if Brock can open up the running game at all because he's athletic, and maybe it improves your passing game to where you can get to 4 or possibly 5 wins, which seems to be an uphill battle right now. But yeah, I can't wait to see. And I think long term for the development of the program, you start him the rest of the year and then get Luke in there for whatever 4 games so you don't burn his red shirt. Have both those guys be ready for battle in the spring.
There's a world where you finally find an offensive identity with Brock because of what he can do with his legs, because that's what this team's been missing. They haven't had really an identity whatsoever offensively.
Yeah, well, listen, that's one of the things I'm shocked about, and we'll move on to other positions. The fact that, JT was an outlier for Mike's quarterback, so I'm just shocked that they cannot find any identity, any positivity with this offense with a drop back quarterback, which is what Mike has used all of his career at Memphis. I mean, he didn't have a running quarterback at Memphis, and maybe this is going to change the way he feels about. Maybe he'll only go to dual threat quarterbacks in the future. Who knows? Certainly, well, I mean, Luke's got a little something to him too, so he's not a statue. There's no doubt about that. All right, so moving on to the rest of the offensive roster, I got a question going back to last week. Cam Davis is listed as, I guess, a co-starter or one of their starting running backs. They named two, but he didn't play a lot. Kurt, was something going on in SMU?
No, I don't. Not that I could tell. Not that I saw anything. No, because he was a starter last week too, and I think he was only on the field. Was it 5 snaps he played, Bob? You did the snap count story. He was not used much, really. LT was used pretty heavily. I mean, I think no other running back was used that much, honestly. So I'm curious what was going on there too. Well, I think this week be a little more telling, maybe, of what exactly is the case there.
Yeah. All right, so receivers, really not a whole lot of change, guys. There you got Hakeem Williams or Kentron Porter at one of the outside positions, Malik Benson or Jaylen Brown. I think you got to go with Malik. Jaylen had a couple of drops he should not have dropped. Of course, we're seeing drops all over the place, but that is what we saw in camp. That's the one of the few things that's been consistent about this team. And then you got Ja'Kai and Darian. Listen, Darian had a big play. I still don't understand the rotation at receiver, but how do you guys feel about the top 6 anyway? And would you who would you like to see play more?
I'm not saying this because Hakeem is a 5-star guy. I'm saying because he's a second-year guy. He's a taller receiver. He can stretch the field. I believe he was in for 35 snaps, 2 targets, 1 catch. Need to see the ball thrown his way a little bit more, for example. Ja'Kai Douglas, I know Ja'Kai struggles as a perimeter blocker. Everybody on the roster is struggling as a perimeter blocker. But Ja'Kai's been pretty darn clutch. I mean, his catch first drive gets you a touchdown. His catch on his backside, essentially. I mean, he was clearly the priority option there for DJ to kind of put them close to the goal line. I still want to see a lot of Ja'Kai. I know we want to see younger receivers. I get it. You still need those older veterans who are really productive. And he's a quiet leader too, yes. But I think you need to see Ja'Kai out there. Tight end, Landon Thomas. I know we kind of lump wide receiver and tight ends into this similar discussion for a lot of ways. It ain't working with Kyle Morlock. It's been a disappointment because his camp was really good. It was really good. Nobody wants to hear that, but it's not working. It's time to go to Landon Thomas, who honestly, I saw him last year play a high school football game. I didn't think a year later he would be playing productive snaps. He was a man among boys on a high school football field, not like dominating at the high school level, not just making play after play. I think you got to get him out there and just see how it looks.
Yeah, listen, it's going to be trial by fire. You're going to see some mistakes. Like I said, he missed a cutoff block the other day, or his man made the tackle. 2 years from now, that kid's not going to miss that block. Then you see him later in the game make a touchdown catch. The other kid we saw at tight end, Amari Williams, who got thrown a ball he should have caught and caught in camp and drops it in this game. But listen, Kyle Morlock, just like DJU, seems to be a fine young man, as does Brian Courtney. But I would like to see, and I know that they're probably going to try to limit these guys as much as they can, not to burn a redshirt year. But it looks like Landon's is going to go away, and that's fine. Listen, you got to do what you got to do to win a football game, right? I do think we need to see more of Amari Williams this year, even if you save his red shirt. He had one of the best set of hands in camp, so I think it'll be interesting to see there. But I think right now it's time to start. See if these guys can hold up at the major college level as true freshmen and not just get their butts whipped every time. And Landon did get a little bit better during the course of that game.
And as I wrote after the Memphis game, it's important for those guys at receiver, at running back, even on the offensive line at tight end. It's important for those guys to go through those lumps now in a season that's effectively lost, as opposed to in 2025, when I don't think they're instantly going to be like a ton better. Like, I don't think I don't expect them to jump back up to a 10-win team, But you would hope they're a bowl team next year. You know,
Oh,
would hope
yeah,
you're not going back-to-back years without a bowl. That's where it becomes a real problem. But I think a big step towards that is letting them go through those growing pains this year, throwing them in the deep end, seeing if they can tread water, seeing if they can even start swimming.
Yep. Yeah, and then moving on to the offensive line, guys, we've been talking about this. The guard play has been underwhelming, to be polite. And
Mike said as much today, and he doesn't say that. He said as much today in his press conference.
I think Mike needs to be more direct. And listen, this is a new era of college football.
Has started to.
Let's quit playing coach speak and spin cycle and all this. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's be upfront about it. These kids are listen. We've turned this into semi AAA football, whatever you want to call it. Everybody's getting paid here. Let's be a little bit more upfront. But yeah, so finally they've made the change. Well, have at least adjusted the depth chart, particularly with Richie Leonard being done for the year. Now it's Keandre Jones, TJ Ferguson, or Andre Otto. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't understand why there's an or here. Put Otto in the game. I mean, maybe you start Ferguson. Ferguson hadn't played much more than Otto, to be honest with you. I mean, he didn't play a lot last year at Alabama. So they're both younger guys, but I think you go with Otto. I think maybe you start Ferguson because he's used to starting, but I think you work Otto into the game, and I think as the season goes on, Otto needs to play more. And then the other guard position is Keandre Jones or Bryson Estes, and I'll let you guys talk about what you think about that.
I don't know. I don't know. Other than to say the guard play has been underwhelming is maybe the understatement of what we've discussed with this offensive line. I'm ready to see some of the younger guys. I mean, Andre Otto has been at the top of our list. The argument for maybe keeping TJ Ferguson out there is he's still relatively young as far as just playing time, as far as, hasn't started a lot. Maybe you want to continue to see what he looks like, but there aren't a lot of definite guys that I can count on right now on this offensive line. Outside of Darius, outside of Maurice, you've got to keep building younger guys and getting them out there.
Yeah, and listen, the tackles are going to remain the same. It's going to be Darius, backed up by Robert Scott. Jeremiah Byers is not even ored with Jalen Early, which to me is I don't get that one. I know Jalen's young. He made some mistakes, started the game, I believe, then was replaced by Byers, who promptly came in and gave up 2 holes and a false start. You can't put up with that with a 5th-year senior, 6-year senior, whatever he is. I hope Jalen gets it reps in the game at right tackle. Listen, as you said, Kurt, it's building for next year now.
I don't read in much to that, honestly. I mean, when Mike, there are certain things and I wrote a story about it today. I think there are certain things with the depth chart that do matter and certain things that don't matter. I mean, I think wasn't Jalen the 3rd string on the depth chart last week behind both Jeremiah or Robert Scott? And he ended up starting and he ended up playing more of the game. So to me, I would expect Jalen Early to start again because I don't think he was the biggest problem Saturday by any means. I think their tackles have been better than their guards, and Jalen Early has shown some promising signs being thrown out there the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, defensively, guys, very little to few, if any, changes on the depth chart. We have seen more of Sione Lalehi the last couple of weeks, more of Grady Kelly. Daniel Lyons, to me, has been probably, even though he doesn't make the flash plays that Farmer and Jackson make, particularly Farmer, and Farmer didn't make a lot of them on Saturday, and I don't recall calling Daryl Jackson's name. I don't remember writing his name down one time. I do remember writing Daniel Lyons down, though. Daniel Lyons is a guy that I think has earned the right to start a game. Now, how much he plays, that was one of the disappointing things I saw on the depth chart on the defensive side of the ball. The other thing I did not like, and I don't understand, is why are Graham Jr. or Cryer ored? What's going on there? I mean, we saw what Juice did against Memphis. He played harder than anybody played at linebacker all season, and it made a difference in that ball game.
Yeah, to me, I'm playing Juice Cryer. I think he's part of the solution, the current and the future. I don't think Omar is really well suited for what Florida State's either trying to do with him. Maybe it's just not a good fit. Maybe his development is just a little bit on the sluggish side. I wrote about this last week. I think there's in the neighborhood, maybe Kurt, of 6 or 7 second-year defensive players, redshirt freshmen, true sophomores who are getting some pretty significant playing time. I think it's like 20 or 25 snaps at minimum. And again, it looked good against Cal. It didn't look good against SMU. It probably ain't going to look great the rest of the way. I'll just be blunt. But again, these are the growing pains. Are you going to go out there? All apologies to, again, Omar Graham, DJ Lundy. Like, okay, they're going to have some moments, but are they a part of the future? Is it really working? I'm with you, Pat. Like, if it's not functional as much with Darrell Jackson, maybe you back off the snaps for Darrell Jackson. Maybe that's the wake-up call that he needs is Daniel Lyons just starts getting more snaps, more opportunities in that rotation. I think everybody's job is up for grabs. I mean, that's the reality of it at 1-4.
Yeah, and Mike has said
a mouthful right there.
Yeah,
I think you said a mouthful right there. Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Mike has said, we're evaluating everything and kind of everything is up for grabs, and I feel like it, to a degree, has been a little bit. I'm not saying there haven't been a few cases of it, but it's been a little bit just words without much backing behind it. I think there are some guys who you could stand to see more of a real competition, and I wonder if you see more of that in the near future.
Yeah, in the secondary, I think we're seeing the same thing. Cypress Brown, Hussey's, AZ Thomas, and Kevin Knowles are your starters. Listen, I didn't see as much out of Quindarius this week as I did last week. The one thing I might think about doing, and of course, I don't know how hard it is in their defensive system, but KJ Kirkland seems like a guy that has started to step up a little bit. You're not getting anything out of what we're calling their strong safeties. Hussey had a terrible game. Earl Little has not been what they thought. None of the Alabama kids have been what we thought they were coming into this program. Devontae Brown was, he's a backup. I wonder if there's any chance you see Kirkland move to strong safety or compete for more playing time there. They talk about cross-training guys all the time at Florida State. And I think I was as disappointed in the secondary this past game as I was any game they played this year because this was not a great passing offense coming into this game. Now, we saw some good things out of Brett Lashley game planning that damn tight end open. They whooped the butt, and Brashard Smith was very impressive, guys. I don't care if it was catching the ball or running the ball, but yeah, any other guys that you guys would like to see play more on the defensive side of the ball?
I think fans will ask about Charles Lester, and I'm not saying he's ready yet, but I think you want to get an alpha dog mindset guy like Charles out there eventually. The great thing about this redshirt rule is he can play 4 games. It can be later in the year. It can be whatever it looks like. I don't think he's ready just yet, but there's going to be questions about, hey, we've seen Ricky Knight make some great plays in practice. You're going to start thinking about, okay, who's knocking on the door of more playing time? It didn't look good. It was a regression. I think, Pat, you mentioned and used that word early. I expected a step forward from the Cal game. I think instead we got a regression with this SMU game.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was a big step backwards for this football program. Let me change that for this football team. I think it was a big step back for this year's football team. Listen, it was so freaking hard to watch in the second half. I felt like we had Mark and I were talking about the post-game show. We felt like we'd been transferred back to 2019 when every Sunday we used to go to our living rooms and do the podcast. It was not a YouTube show, and it just got so hard to do week after week. And somebody that I'm close to called me and goes, how tough are you going to be on Tuesday? And I said, I got 7 weeks of this shit to go through. I'm going to have to spread it out. I can't be the prosecuting lawyer all the time. And by the way, when you saw me react with doing my fist pumps, is because the 3 of us on this podcast are huge Brave fans. In fact, my dog Murphy is named after Dale Murphy, and the Braves blew it big time this afternoon. And I'm afraid to say it, but right now things are looking good for the Braves. I don't know what inning it is, but if you're a Braves fan, there's still a chance that you're going to make the playoffs this postseason, which we're all huge fans of. All right, guys. So before we got about 8 minutes before Mike's show starts in downtown, and usually we try to get off around 7 so that if people want to watch that on streaming, they can do that. Said a couple of things, and listen, I'm always one of the things I love to do on Saturdays after the games is listen to these press conferences. I was up till 4:00 in the morning listening to Mike and Hugh Freeze and Mac Brown and Kirby Smart and Kalen DeBoer. I spend way too much time, I think a lot of times more gets said than done. I think we've kind of referenced that earlier. But Mike made a couple of comments. Just want to see what you mean. And he said this in various ways over the last couple of weeks, and it makes me wonder what he is seeing. I mean, here's his quote. I mean, I see what people can do. I see what I believe they can become. I see what I feel and what sense of the potential of this group or of a group. I don't know what that means. Does anybody to me, it's just trying to continue to have positive vibes and continue to motivate this football team in some form or fashion.
I think he's not willing to totally admit that the team he thought he had is not in there somewhere. I think he's just, as a coach, you can't totally give up that hope. I mean, he is not one. He's done it a little more lately, like we talked about, but he is not one to go full Hugh Freeze and start pushing people in front of buses.
Yeah. Then the next one was, I think this sums up when you're really looking for light at the end of the tunnel and hope it's not a freight train coming your way. I think I thought there were some good things. I thought there were some good plays. It's gotten so bad, guys, that we are having to point out specific individual plays to find positive things. That's how, and I think he was. But it was almost. I think he would probably wish he hadn't said that, right? Because you're really digging. I mean, it shows you how hard they're digging to find positive film clips to sell this football team on.
Yeah, the only argument I would have there is if you show some film of, like we talked about, Lawrence Toafili, Kentron trying to track down that guy who's going 82 yards the other way, there can be. Is that somewhat aspirational, to use a Jerry Cutts word? Is that aspirational enough to motivate some guys in the room? And the problem is, if you got to do that week, whatever we are going into game 6, you got some problems. Yep. I would put some Lawrence Toafili runs out there. I would put some Ja'Kai Douglas plays out there as being some positives. But again, at some point, you're only scoring 16 points. 4 straight games in the teens as an offense. Yep. Let's bury the some positives.
Yeah, well, listen, I have a note, and we don't have to belabor it, but I was telling Kurt before we got started when he talked about the team didn't particularly respond well. I think there's a reason they didn't respond well, particularly on defense after SMU got his 21st point. When it was 21-9, because I think that you can't fool the kids. The kids knew that once it got to be a 2-score game, this was a big, big uphill battle for this team, and I think that spoke volumes to how maybe there's not an internal belief on the field as far as the kids are concerned.
Adam Fuller said something to the effect today of like, you hope guys aren't scoreboard watching, but it can be a bit of an inevitability, like in certain situations, and yeah. Yeah.
Then of course, this one I really don't. If you are a real one, you are going to rise up. A couple other things were said and continued, and I believe we have a football team full of real guys. Well, all right. So this is the fastest, most explosive, and strongest football team he's ever had. It's a locker room full of real guys. They've had every opportunity to step up and respond to adversity because it's been nothing but a year full of adversity. I don't see this, guys. And if he's got these real guys, these real football players in the locker room, then the issue aren't the players, it's the coaches. Again, it goes back to if you got some real guys in that locker room and they're not responding to what they're hearing, that's on the coaches. So again, some of these things that coaches choose to say, he must be watching Hugh Freeze on a weekly basis.
It's a coach speak problem. It extends far beyond Mike Norvell. I think he's never going to entirely totally speak his mind when things are going well or when things are going poorly.
Yeah, well, and listen, I don't know what they can do to get this thing turned around. I think it's going to be an interesting next 2 weeks, particularly with an off week to see. Listen, I meant to say this when we were talking about the young guys playing. What's going to really stink for this football team, because they're going to be young next year, right? I mean, you look at what they're losing. They're going to have to attack the portal again. I know we're about to run long, but there would have been a huge, huge advantage even for this team to go to a bad bowl game, because that fifth game, the bowl game, does not count against eligibility. You would have been able to go ahead and listen. And here's the thing, guys. We saw guys opt out or quit on this team last year for not going to the playoffs. You got some questions about what the future holds if they're gonna, if they were to qualify for a bowl at Sisson. And listen, I think that ship has sailed, but I think there are a lot of questions still that could be addressed because of where we are in the nature of college football, or the dynamics of college football as it exists today.
I think, again, this is about player development, but Pat, to your point, it's about finding out who I want to retain on the roster for 2025. It's about looking each young man in the face and saying, are you giving not just the requisite effort, the effort that your teammate demands, that we expect here? You hear Odell talk about the Florida State standard. This ain't the Florida State standard, but you want to find out who is going to bust their butts the rest of the way, because let's be honest, that NIL money is going to go to a lot of those guys that Mike Norvell loves and sees busting butt within a 1-4 or whatever this record ends up being. That he is big on talent retention. So it can be about everybody from that true freshman who's busting it on a Sunday night to a guy who's busting it in a game down 3 touchdowns on a Saturday, right?
Yep.
We talked about it earlier with the DJ pick 6. It doesn't speak the best about the future. And I can't break down off the top of my head the breakdown of who was seniors in the field at the time, who was junior, sophomores. Right. The 2 guys who are assuredly not loafing are redshirt seniors who are not going to be here next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out long term. There's no doubt about that. A lot of questions. Listen, they are starting. It looks like in the fourth quarter, Mike did say, "Hey, let's start the youth movement. Let's start playing people. Find out what we got moving forward." And listen, it's going to be a long year, guys. I think we've all come to the acceptance of that, and wasn't what anybody was expecting. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't want to get into it now because we're about to go off the air, but I'm kind of surprised that Mike didn't see this coming a little bit better, because he's mentioned that he knows what it takes to win. He's been around. He's been doing this a long time. I'm kind of surprised that, I'm surprised that the coaching staff is surprised that this is going. I mean, they've been around this game a long time. Listen, we got a lot. We got 7 or 8 more weeks to talk about what the solutions are moving forward. We'll get into that. But if you want to read more, Kurt, like you said, just had his article come out. FSU's depth chart changes me more than Mike Norvell is letting on. You can go to theosceola.com and check that out. Bob's got his article up on DJU's broken right pinky finger. He's also got a dislocated left pinky finger. FSU offensive lineman Richie Leonard is done for the season. He was a transfer from Florida, of course, so we got that update in there. And obviously we will have practice notes tomorrow. The Seminoles hit the field again at about 9:30. Our guys will be out there. Fish, Nick, and possibly JP and I will be back at 3 to talk recruiting, and then talk about Takeaway Tuesday a little bit. Although that's probably not going to. I'm going to have to spread my frustration out over the next 7 weeks, so it's probably going to be a little bit middle of the road. So Judge Brown, you'll be disappointed. I'm not gonna go. And listen, I was hoping we would have Jerry on the show today, because Jerry always has a unique ability to find positive. That little ray of sunshine under a cloudy sky. I was thinking about it today. If we had been lawyers, I would have been a prosecuting lawyer. Jerry would have been a defense lawyer, because Jerry finds that little bit of wiggle room to keep us all motivated and keep hope and keep optimism. So, but we'll be back tomorrow on Seminole Sidelines. We'll be back on Wednesday at 3 p.m. as well. Kurt, Bob, Jerry have usually filled that slot. Nick and I will be back tomorrow with Fish and JP at 3 o'clock on Tuesday. Then hopefully we'll have a Clemson Rivals writer with us on Thursday to talk about the Tigers, although I'm not sure how many people actually want to hear that this week, but we'll have him on and kind of get a little overview of how that team has improved since the season opener against Georgia. But thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great night, and we'll be back tomorrow. And please go check us out at theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and check out all our coverage of Florida State as they get ready to take on the Tigers on Saturday night in Doak Campbell Stadium. Have a great night, and appreciate you listening.